Hi, my name is Bob Ankrit from the Royal Canadian Legion in Burlington. Today we're in front of the cenotaph by City Hall on Brant Street. Once again this year, the City of Burlington and the Royal Canadian Legion have partnered in a veteran program with banners. I think that's to help us remember the sacrifices of veterans and their families to help protect this country. Soon you will be hearing from those families about how they feel about the banners and the individuals that are on them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Glen Davies, son of Fred Davies.
And I'm Deedee Davies, daughter of Fred Davies.
When I see the banner on the street, I feel very proud. I know that my sister and brother feel the same way. We are grateful that because of the hardships he endured, we can enjoy a relatively carefree life. He sacrificed so much, and we are proud that he is receiving some public recognition for all he did to protect our freedoms that our world takes for granted. He went through many difficulties during the war years. He learned the value of teamwork both during his flying days and his POW days. He regularly volunteered with many groups, including the Scouts, the food kitchens, and helping out at long-term care residences. Through his energy, he was spreading hope for a better society. Once he retired, he had the opportunity to reflect on the early years in his life and realized he was proud of them as well. During this period, Dad compiled a memoir of the years that focused on the people during the war, not the shooting. To help keep these memories alive, he actively supported the museums in Trenton, Hamilton, and in Nanton, Alberta. To further our knowledge from his memoir, Dad took us to Europe in 2012 to trace his escape route that he followed for 2 weeks between being shot down and captured. During that time, we met many of the people that helped him or the descendants of those people that kept him hidden during that time.
We look up to Dad and the other veterans. They are heroes because they protected our freedom and democracy. The Second World War was necessary, but Dad wanted all of us, especially the youth, to know one thing: war is hell. He didn't want them to think it was cool, fun, or exciting. Even when he saw how some kids could be reckless with their freedom and liberty, he said it was better that they were ignorant about war than to experience what he did as a young soldier. Dad was in his 70s when he started speaking to students at schools through the Memory Project. He chose to focus on history rather than war. Dad did his last talk when he was 93 years old at Gary Allen School. He hoped his talks would help the youth to see that times have changed and how people respond to disputes must change as well. War is not the first response, it's the last.
Yeah, I want to thank the Burlington Legion for putting the banners up along Brant Street, dedicated to men and women who have fought in the wars. Some of them came home. My grandfather, George Ireland, they call him George Snooze Ireland, was in World War I. His banner's there. I'm very proud, and my family are very proud to have George's banner hanging high on Brant Street. George was a young man who signed up with the 205th. As a matter of fact, he was a football player with the Hamilton Tigers. The same team in 1915 won the Grey Cup. He convinced many of the players and many of the followers to join the 205th Tiger Regiment, and they signed up and went off to war. George was a quartermaster and looked after the equipment of the men, went overseas and worked for a great number of years with Camp Whitley in World War I, finally went overseas, and in April the 10th, 1918, George was wounded. He did survive, and he formed a baseball team when he was in in the rehabilitation, and gathered a bunch of men, and they played baseball against an American team in 1918 at a field in England, in Manchester. Quite a game. I don't know who won that game, but it was quite the game, I'm sure. George was great into sports, and when the war was over, he came back and helped to form in 1919 the Hamilton Tigers and got them back in playing football again. They didn't play for the Grey Cup that year, but he was the captain of that team and stayed on playing football with the Hamilton Tigers for a number of years following that. George, if he was here today, would say, although he was quite a sportsman, sports is not the whole thing. He would say to the youth of today, if you're going to play sports, make sure you get an education. And I'm sure that he instilled in that whole idea in my brother Pat Quinn, to make sure that Pat got an education, because if nothing happened from his hockey career, that he had something to fall back on. That's what George would say to the young people of today. If you're going to play sports, make sure you get an education. Education is very important. We hope that that men and women don't have to go off to war any longer. That we can live in peace. That it was off a war. World War I was supposed to be the war that ended all wars, and as we know, there was a World War II. Unfortunately, many, many lives have been lost to wars. Let's not let that happen. Young people, work together with your community, and if you're called upon, make sure you fulfill the need that is there from your country. George Snooze Ireland, my grandfather, we're very proud of him, and thank you again to the Burlington Legion, Branch 60, for putting the banners up along Branch Street, recognizing the men and women who went off to war during World War I and World War II and the Korean War. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for putting the banner up.
My name is Katherine Pike. I'm the daughter of John G. Pabke, and this is my husband, Stuart Pike. Just briefly, my father, John, is from Quebec City. He was born in December of 1923 to an Anglophone family.
While he was in high school, he was interested in motorcycles. And when it came time at the end of high school to think about joining up, he decided he wanted to go with the Army because he wanted to ride motorcycles in the war. So he did some training in Lausanne, Quebec, and he'd picked up a lot of French just on the street. But in Lausanne, it was really like a finishing school for French for him while he was training. He did training in Lausanne before being shipped off to, I think it was Aldershot in England, where they did more training. And then they were sent over to the continent about 30 days after D-Day, and unfortunately he didn't get a dispatch rider to do motorcycle training or anything, so he just was in the trenches. He got to unfortunately see some of his friends killed by enemy aircraft, and it was much later in the war that one of his officers said, "You know how I work, you're coming with me." And they were posted to the Canadian headquarters that they set up in France. Much later, he did end up being a dispatch rider, and so he did in the end sort of get his dream to ride motorcycles. Now his son-in-law rides a motorcycle, and I know my father-in-law kind of enjoys looking at it when he visits us in the home. He is still alive. He's almost 98, and he lives here in Burlington at Martha's Landing. So it's hard to get him out, so he couldn't be here today, but when we're thinking about what advice he would have for the youth of today, I really think that it was one of his values, really, to make yourself useful. I think it was a whole generation that were taught to be of use in your society. Now, he was very involved with his church, which was the Cathedral of the Holy Trinity in Quebec City.
He was warden there for many, many years.
Yeah.
He was also warden in another church on the Gaspé coast. We have family ties to Percy, Quebec. And my father was a very big guy for volunteering in the church. He felt that those were his two churches. And he felt giving of yourself was what should be done.
Yeah. So he really thinks that it's important to give back to your society, the community that helped you grow up and gave you your values, and it's important to keep that going. So he's always interested in what his grandchildren are doing and what they're doing in society. So we are very, very grateful for him, for what he did, for what he gave, and for the generation of his peers who sacrificed in many ways. Some of them did the supreme sacrifice, of course, losing their lives, and other people, others of them sacrificed in giving of their life, giving their time, their energy, their ability, and they kept that going. When they returned from the war, it became part of their way of being. They really built our society and continue to have a lasting influence. So we're very grateful to John. We call him grandfather, and we're very grateful for him. He's a wonderful man, and we know that there are plenty of men and women who are just like him. They're getting fewer and far between, and we need to express our gratitude to them and also follow their example. So thank you for interviewing us. John is a great guy. We hope to have him for many, many more years to come. And when he sees this, we'll show him on an iPad or something. He will be tickled, I'm sure.